In a Witch's Company by Marley Grim for the Moonset Gazette. In the moonlit shimmer of Moonset's midnight hour, the opulent walls of Madam Wink's mansion loomed like a fortress against the hulking and ominous pillars of the past. A gathering place tonight, not merely for the town's luminaries, but for the restless spirits they wished to conjure. Or so they hoped. On the walls, great portraits of generations of Wink's family commanded attention, each grim depiction imbued with that uncanny effect where it seems the eyes always follow you, scrutinizing every guest with silent judgment from their gilded frames. This séance, a velvet-draped affair, scented with the faintest hint of peril, promised to peel back the shadowy layers of history that clung to Moonset like a second skin. And as we may walk amongst serpents on this night, they may indeed shed that skin. As we navigated the edges of the room, Tut leaned in, his voice low and tinged with a conspiratorial edge. "Grim, did you bring anything for protection?" he inquired, his eyes darting to the shadowed corners of the hall. I replied dryly, "No, don't recall the invite mentioning anything about blood sport." Tut chuckled softly, the sound almost swallowed by the vastness of the hall. "Not to worry," he whispered, pulling back his jacket slightly to reveal the sleek silver handle of a Walter PPK tucked neatly into his boot, the initials AT engraved in its handle. "I came prepared for the both of us." Tut and I wandered the dimly lit corridors of Madam Wink's mansion. Our steps echoed a soft thump, thump against the ancient wood. The sound harmonized with the distant howling of an unseen beast. Or was it just the wind? At the sound, Tut shivered slightly, his usually composed demeanor faltering as he glanced nervously towards the darkened windows. "I grew up around here," Tut whispered, his voice carrying a hint of unease. "And there were always warnings about the surrounding forest." He pointed his gaze fixed on something in the shadows that I couldn't see. "My grandfather had a bit of wisdom about these woods," he continued, drawing closer as if the walls themselves might be listening. "He used to say if you're ever in the woods and you think you hear someone call your name, no, you didn't." Tut's eyes met mine, a serious glint in them. "Marley, I suggest you heed that warning as well," he advised as we resumed our walk. In Moonset, distinguishing between the howls of the wind and the cryptic language of something more sinister was always a gamble. As Tut and I ascended the grand staircase to the second floor, our eyes swept over the relics of a bygone era. Shelves buckling under weighty tomes, walls adorned with portraits whose eyes seemed to flicker with a knowing glint. The faces in these portraits were unsettling, each one painted with an intensity that felt almost alive, as if they were silently observing, or worse, in the know of something we did not. Eyes that didn't just follow you, but seemed to peer into your very soul, unearthing secrets that I'd rather keep buried. It was here, in a fleeting shadow cast by the flickering light of a wall sconce, that I caught a glimpse of something inexplicable. An unfinished sculpture, its form as elusive as the smoke from Madam Wink's ever-present cigarette. I stopped dead in my tracks, causing Tut to nearly bump into me. "I could have sworn I just saw that unfinished sculpture from Ellie Tink's Emporium," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. Tut raised an eyebrow, his face a mask of skepticism. "As hard and as quickly as that fire burned, I'd be very shocked if the sculpture had survived," he muttered, scanning the dimly lit hallway as if trying to spot the sculpture himself. And even in the rare chance it did, what the hell is it doing in Madam Wink's mansion? His voice carried a hint of alarm now, suggesting that the implications of what we might be dealing with were slowly dawning on him. We both knew that in Moonset the improbable was often possible, and the impossible, well, it merely took a bit longer. But before I could fully digest the sight, the stony-faced butler Cuttingmore materialized with the silent grace of a ghost, his sudden appearance startling Tut and me so sharply that we nearly jumped out of our skins. The butler, with his ever-permanent scowl deepening, seemed little more than annoyed by our reaction, as if our fright were just another tedious interruption in his night. The sculptor, like a figment of a fever dream, was gone when I turned back, leaving me with a chill. Tut, recovering his composure with a quick shake of his head, let out a low chuckle. "Seems we're not the only specters wandering these halls tonight, eh, Grim?" he said, his voice carrying a mix of humor and a darker, more foreboding undertone. His words hung in the air, echoing slightly as we followed the butler's stiff walk back towards the grand living room, the weight of his warning settling heavily between us. Cuttingmore, with a nod as stiff as his pressed collar, ushered Tut and me down to the gathering. The living room, a grand cavern of history and wealth, buzzed with the low murmur of Moonset's elite. As Tut and I walked through the crowd, I noted each attendant with a journalist's eye. First, there was Wayne of Wayne's Paranormal Emporium and Pool Supplies, his dark attire blending into the shadows, a sly grin playing across his face as he exchanged hushed words with a couple clutching a curious-looking artifact. Nearby was Tom Brush, the skittish realtor. However, at the edge of the room, his eyes flickering constantly towards the grand staircase as if expecting something, or someone, to descend at any moment. His nervous energy seemed at odds with the calm opulence around him. And then there was Delilah Blue, Madam Wink's feisty niece. She moved through the crowd with an effortless charm that belied her penchant for mischief. Her laughter bright and clear, cut through the low conversations, drawing eyes and smiles even from those who knew better than to trust her completely. She paused now and then to flirtatiously tease some of the older, more dignified guests, her youthful vivacity a stark contrast to their reserved composure. Above us on the balcony, Madam Wink stood surveying her assembled guests, her presence commanding even from a distance. The younger butler, her constant companion, was by her side, his youthful features schooled into an expression of attentive serenity that matched his meticulously tailored suit. Each figure added to the rich tapestry of Moonset's history, their personal stories interwoven with the legends and the rumors that filled the town like the dense fog that rolled off the cliffs every morning. Her voice cascaded down like the finest silk, weaving through the air with the elegance of a practiced storyteller. "Tonight we stand on the precipice of the past," Madam Wink declared, her words tinged with the gravity of the occasion. The anniversary of the town's founding and the mysterious death of its founder, Darla Moonset. She continued, her tone gaining momentum as she captured the rapt attention of her audience. "Moonset has seen its fair share of horrors, shadows that have crept through our streets and whispered in our homes, yet tonight is not a night for fear but for celebration, a night to honor the strength and spirit that has carried us through the darkness." Her voice rose and fell rhythmically, echoing off the high walls, transforming the room into a vessel for her rich narrative, each word a brick in the bridge from past to present. Madam Wink's voice continued to ripple through the room, mesmerizing and commanding. "Each of you was brought here tonight not by my invitation, but by the request of the spirit world," she proclaimed, her eyes sweeping over the crowd, making every guest feel seen and somehow summoned. "The spirits are particularly lively this evening and have plans for each of us. They speak of revelations and reckonings that await before dawn. Just as her monologue drew to a close, imbuing the atmosphere with a sense of inevitable destiny, the air previously thick with anticipation was violently cut by the sharp crack of a door slamming open. Sailor Pete, his face a map of anguish and wild accusation, barreled into the room like a storm surge, his eyes wild and his breath ragged. "She's a witch!" he bellowed, his voice hoarse as he pointed a quivering finger directly at Madam Wink. "Responsible for Stormlung's curse! The curse that claimed the life of my first mate, Shelley!" His accusations echoed ominously around the room, turning talk of spirits into accusations of scandal and suspicion. The room, a tableau of shocked faces and half-raised glasses, froze as Pete's hand shook around the grip of a gun. But before the weapon could sing its deadly note, Deputy Officer Alma Twix sprang into action. With the swiftness belying her awkward demeanor, she tackled Pete to the ground, her usually gentle voice commanding as she shouted for calm. Tut and I, spurred by the unfolding chaos, lent our strength to subdue the enraged sailor. As the three of us struggled to restrain Pete, Tut managed a quick introduction over the commotion. "Grim, this is Deputy Officer Alma Twixt," he said, just loud enough to be heard over Pete's ranting. Twixt, now holding Pete's arms behind his back, looked up and gave a quick assertive nod. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Grim," she said, her voice firm yet somehow melodic under the stress. We shared a brief look, her eyes sparkling with a mix of determination and something mischievously twinkling. And not a bad-looking dame, I thought to myself, momentarily distracted by her resilience as much as her features. Just then, as I glanced towards the doorway, I thought I saw Ellie Tink lurking in a shadowy alcove, her face a pale specter framed by the dim light. But when I looked again, she was gone, vanished like a ghost, leaving me to question if she had been there at all or if the night's tensions were fraying my senses. With a shake of my head to clear the confusion, I turned my attention back to the intimate task at hand, helping Twixt and Tut secure Pete before any more drama could unfold. As Pete was hauled away, his rantings about curses and witchcraft echoed off the walls, leaving a residue of doubt in the air. His words, desperate and charged, seemed to linger, melding with the shadows that danced at the edges of the grand room. My mind raced back to the phantom sculpture and the old sailor's accusations, feeling the edges of the evening blur into surreal tableau. Was there truth to the sailor's ravings? Or was it merely the venting of a troubled mind? I tapped Tut on the shoulder, drawing his attention from the commotion that was now moving towards the mansion's exit. "You remember that advice you gave me about hearing your name in the woods? Something tells me we haven't been listening close enough tonight," I murmured, my voice low but urgent. Just as the words left my lips, a clap of thunder rolled across the sky as if to punctuate the sentiment. The sound boomed through the grand windows, resonating with the tense atmosphere inside, and for a moment it felt as though the very foundations of the mansion quivered with foreboding. In the world of Moonset, where the veil between truth and superstition is as thin as the wisp of smoke from Madam Wink's cigarette, anything was possible. Tonight, as the séance was set to begin under the watchful eye of history's silent witnesses, all were about to tread on the thin ice of reality, where the cracks were already beginning to show. The air was charged with an electric anticipation, each breath thick with the scent of impending revelations. This night, draped in the opulent shadows of Madam Wink's mansion, was merely the overture to a symphony of scares that were just beginning to stir. As the room settled back into a nervous quiet, the flicker of candles casting ghostly shapes on the walls, it was clear that what we were about to encounter was not for the faint of heart. Tonight, the doors to the other side would creak open, and the voices that slipped through would be more than mere echoes of the past. They would be declarations of a reality we had yet to fully comprehend. Marley Grim for the Moonset Gazette.